Yeah. Go ahead, man.
Contextual prompting, just providing a sense of background for deeper understanding. So in the example here, this is given the trend toward plant-based diets, suggest new menu items that can increase morning traffic. You're guiding it in the direction to subtly give it the output or the outcome that you want. We've done a couple of variations of that. Chain of thought prompting is a good way to do that. Iterative prompting is a good way to do that. Soft prompting is a good way to do that. You could even combine it, but you're guiding it in a direction that provides scope and grounding it down into what you need. Referencing a file and then giving it maybe a couple of bullet points and saying, take this and summarize it as an executive summary. It would
Mhm.
be, I think, a good example of contextual prompting.
That was kind of what I was doing in that example I talked about in San Francisco, where I was like saying, okay, I've got my prompt, like I need, bullet points from a session for a conference, but then I added the context of here's the session description so that it tuned toward the theme of what that session was. So that it wasn't just out of the box generic, the same thing for every single session. It looked at, well, what is this session about, so that I could create a prompt that works for that session really well. And sometimes the context of what you're asking for, that little piece of context, it may be something that's like not directly related or seemingly relevant to what you're asking for, but the context can kind of turn it in a direction. Like in here, menu items for a coffee shops, like it might, if you didn't have that context, it would just like offer like coffee specific drinks and stuff like that. But since we're talking about plant-based diets, whenever I ran the prompt, it mentioned like avocado toast, or like instead of these types of muffins, have like these plant-based options and stuff like that. So it's like, if something, it's good in ideation phases. If something is trending in your industry, then add that context of that trend, and then you're a little bit more in line with hopefully being successful with what you're ideating, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's spot on. Um, while you were stepping through that version of it, I went ahead and drafted a version of it just using
Mhm.
Copilot chat for Microsoft 365. In this case, we're doing an email campaign. We're targeting former customers using insights from their previous visits and their purchase history. In order for it to do that, it would actually need to have some reference material for previous preferences and reference history. That might be one where you direct Copilot to a specific file, for
Mhm.
instance. But from there, we've set the context of what we're looking for, and an effective email campaign. It is going to pull in some of the training data for content that's been publicly available on that. And it's going to work that into its response and then start generating um,
Yeah.
output on that. But um, this one's useful because you're scoping it, you're grounding it down to that context, that topic, and it can be really eye-opening, the results. I might not have known some of the best practices for an email campaign targeting former customers. I might not have had knowledge of that. I'll give you one example of that, that it was really helpful for me. Uh, there's an Excel demo that I do, and it deals with an inventory list, and I needed help with putting like a formula into there. So I actually went to Copilot Chat and was like, here's a sample of my data. I need to create a new column inside of this to uh, set up a reorder date based off of what we have in stock and the quantity that we need to reorder. It
Mhm.
pointed out that you should actually do a formula based off of how many items are you using per day, so we can estimate when you're going to hit the reorder inventory level. And it created a formula based off of that. But it was because I gave it the context of the data that I was in, and I gave it the ask. It went ahead and pointed out that thing that I didn't know that I needed to factor in, was like, how many items am I using per day? That's going to give you the best estimate of when you need to go ahead and start that reorder.